how do you do that? How do you really get to know yourself?
Well, first of all, I share that space with you, Courtney, in a sense that I was that people pleaser. And the funny thing is that I was even a coach back then. I coached people more from a performance perspective. And I believed that kind of being that people pleaser was part of my performance, right? If I could get people to like me, if I could, get people to think a certain way and please them and manipulate them into, things that I wanted, then that was aiding my performance. And it took me some time to realize how detrimental that was to me as a person, to be that people pleaser, and how really when you are in that space of people pleasing, you don't even know who you are. You don't even know what you love. And I would be faced with these questions like, well, what makes you happy? I'm like, well, when everyone else is happy. Well, what do you like to do? I'm good with what everyone else wants to do. And you realize it's like, oh my gosh, I have no identity of my own. I'm just plugged into everybody else and, got my cart hitched to theirs. And as long as they're good, I'm good. So that was kind of like the eye opener for me and going, wow, if I have to live a life of my joy only coming from making other people happy, like that's really scary. And that's an uncontrollable. So that really started my journey in changing that. And it becomes this process of, well, if you don't know those things about yourself, you don't know what you love and you don't know what fills you up and makes you happy and all of that, that's where it starts. And it's discovery. Most people pleasers don't have their authenticity and they don't know much about them. So it starts with creating a relationship with yourself.
And how do you do that? Like, where do you begin? I know years ago in therapy, I had that question posed to me, what makes you happy? And, it seems like such a simple question. And I've talked to another coach prior to this about the same thing. She coaches divorced moms and they lose themselves, especially moms. I think we lose ourselves very much so. Your children are older, so you've probably gotten a little bit more freedom. My kids are very young still, so they require a lot from me. But it's hard to really add that element in on top of it. You really do lose a sense of self. I mean, it seems like such an easy question. What do you like? What do you enjoy? What do you love? How did you find it for yourself?
It really goes back to your values. And you're right, it stumps a lot of people. I mean, it's the first thing I work on with my clients is going, what do you love? What fills you up? And sometimes people can rattle things off and other times they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know. And so we have to go back to, okay, well, can you remember something 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Sometimes I have my clients that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're like, well, when I was in high school, and it goes back this long, long way before they lost themselves to like being a partner, to being executive, to being a parent, where you lose all those values. So I take people through their values and go, okay, well, let's go back to whatever memory you have when you were smiling, when you felt those butterflies in your stomach, when your heart was beating a little faster. Like, what were you doing? Where were you? Who were you with? So we start really kind of forming that discovery around those past moments. And you're like, oh, wow, well, I was in a golf tournament. Oh, what was good about it? I just love competing. I love being outside. I love being around people. And we start to say things like that. And then you pick up on those values. And then you start to share other stories and you start to find this commonality. Oh, well, when I was hiking here and I was outside and I was with my friends, and you're like, okay, do we see a theme here? We love time in nature. We love to be social. So you pick up on those common threads that are called your values. And that is step one. Like now, at least we know what we can put into our life every day that fills us up and brings us joy.
And does that play with, I know you have your morning mindset journal that really, I think, helps you focus and tap into these things. So once you start to uncover these things, whether they're in the past, I mean, even I'm as you're talking, I'm going back, I'm like, okay, what did I love to do, And so it's kind of, I'm going through this in my own head. Once you start writing these down, do you start to include these into like a routine so that you can almost like relearn who you are?
Absolutely. You talk about living intentionally, right? And so now we're going to start intentionally building our day. which intentionally builds our life. So my morning mindset journal is a daily practice that actually encompasses the whole non-negotiable you book, so that you have a way to get your values in, you have a way to live intentionally, to be your authentic self, to be responsible. So, the second step in my morning mindset journal is, what are your intentions for the day? So my intentions include part of my values. It's my responsibility to make sure that the things that I love show up in my life. And that's hard for people sometimes, right? Because we're like, oh, I don't have time. I've got to do this and I've got to do that, right? You're a mom and you have your company. But again, it's our responsibility to put them in if we want to be able to love ourselves and know who we truly are. We've got to give ourselves what we need. It starts there.